Thanks for being part of a great conversation yet again. One of the things that we didn't get to talk about tonight was your top tips for having your brand stand out when it comes to sponsorship activations.
Number one, be creative. So look for every opportunity to try and make as much noise as possible, whether it be an internal or an external audience, by being relevant. Really understand who you're talking to and try and be creative in the way that you can add value, whether it be through experience, whether it be through how you place your brand or where you place your brand. But these days, it's not just putting a logo on the back of a jersey. You have to make sure that you look for every opportunity to be different.
Cool. Any other key takeaway tips before we wrap up for the night?
If you are ever applying to a corporate for sponsorship dollars or for or looking for in-kind, make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. I sit on Suncorp's panel when we're looking at sponsorships for their community engagement opportunities. We literally, if it's in a manila folder, we put it to one side. You need to be creative in the way that you present yourself to the organisation as well. That's it. Look, you know, present in a box. You know, send them something interesting that represents what you believe is the opportunity that they're going to benefit from. Just don't be standard, because there's too much standardisation out there.
So in other words, stand out, stand out, stand out. Nick, thanks once again for your insights and for your time tonight. It's been really, really appreciated.
Thanks, Kat.
April, thanks for a great conversation tonight about perfecting those sponsorship relationships that we have. One of the things that we didn't really get to talk about too much was how do we monitor, I guess, the brand integrity throughout a sponsorship relationship?
This is a really important component of a brand's deliverable in terms of a sponsorship relationship. A contract needs to be as watertight as possible in order to maintain integrity. I know that sounds difficult and sometimes arduous and conservative, but whenever there's a grey area, we always go back to the contract. And it's interesting now because in that contract, we're not just talking about making sure you've got your brand is signed off or all those type of things. To maintain integrity as well, we sponsor some sporting teams and things. So there is a new trend which is about making sure there's morality clauses and behaviour clauses in there, not only for players now. So the new trend is really also to watch administration behaviour. So when there is some conflict with the administration on how they're running something, and that could be not only for a sport organisation, you could be a charity, you could be a community organisation, an environmental group. How you operate now is being viewed by the brand, and that's when I spoke earlier about when we look at the sponsorship filter and down the bottom we look at administration. That is how we now convert that into a contract binding agreement. If you breach that brings disrepute to both the entity that we're supporting, we have an option to get out.
When something goes terribly wrong, it gets reported in the news, it gets seen. How do you monitor the more subtle stuff? How do you make sure that the relationship is maintained throughout the
Look, there was an incident, and I won't name the sporting team, many years ago, where we actually tracked the press coverage via positive, negative or neutral. And we used that as an opportunity to come out with opposing views to what the community felt was against that particular team at that time. And so it's difficult. It's difficult for brands. Sometimes we have to weather the storms and know that, they have to go through this for whatever reason, and it might actually better that or not, improve the situation. So it depends, but we do track that really. We Google alerts, we do media monitoring, we do all sorts of tracking of our properties to make sure that when they're active, we understand what's happening with them, because sometimes we don't know what's happening day to day with all our properties because there's so many of them. So.
Awesome. Thank you for adding extra insight to the conversation, and thanks once again for your time tonight, April. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Miranda, thanks for being part of such a really juicy conversation about perfecting partnerships. One of the things that we didn't get to touch on tonight is what do we do when a partnership or sponsorship arrangement starts to turn sour?
Well, as I said earlier tonight, it is around relationships, and that's what we are in the business of, and it's about building those relationships. And I suppose the best way to answer that question is through example. And one of those examples is when I was at the Australian Open and working with Optus. When I initially arrived, Optus was a really negative brand within the business, and that was basically because the account manager at the time had a really poor relationship with the Optus account manager, so they just butt heads on all different things, which, as you can appreciate, is not going to help anything. So I took it upon myself to really change the relationship, and one of the important things when you are account managing is you're also the ambassador for that brand within your own business. So I decided I'm going to really turn this around. I'm going to make Optus one of the great brands within the business. So I really worked hard, and every conversation I had with the account manager within the Optus organisation, I would always end by asking them something personal, like what did you do on the weekend, or what are you doing tonight, and remember that and take that to the next conversation.
Yep.
So you start to build a connection, and through that connection we developed a really great relationship. And when I then got offered tickets to go to, so Optus are also the sponsors of the Carlton Football Club, so when I got offered tickets to go to their training session with the players, instead of going, this is great for me, I gave them to our operations team.
Yep.
So all the boys in the operations went, and suddenly they became brand ambassadors. So the relationship basically converted from potentially a decline of over $2 million to a reinvestment of more than $2 million.
So it's about understanding that while you're talking about brands, you're talking about people and you're talking about relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Thank you once again, Miranda, for your time and your expertise this evening. It's been a really great discussion.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.